45 minutes of your valuable time.
Oh, you said lives would be changed.
I'm sorry?
You said lives would be changed, Howard.
You'll have to stand up and talk to me. Oh, it's John Trumbull, ladies and gentlemen. Look at Mr. Smarty Pants. Fuck that guy.
Correct answer.
All right. Are there children here? See, I always tell them, no kids, and these shitheads don't believe me. I'm here just to basically shoot the shit for now. And here they bring me water. I gotta... This convention used to be well organized. It was a time. All right, I normally just say, I don't have oralalia, but I have a lot to say. And the reality is, some of you know me. Or anybody here has never sat in a room with me for the first time? Anybody? Wow. Why are you here?
I've heard what you said.
Okay. All right. And you?
I liked your books back in the 70s.
Oh, when I was young.
Yeah,
I fucked
especially
them. Huh?
Iron Wolf and the Tree Station.
So basically your relationship with my career is frozen 40 years ago.
Pretty much.
Great, that's really good. It makes me feel even better about myself after being this old.
Well, now I catch up.
It's about fucking time. Okay. The situation for me is, and I'll give you the stats here. I'm 75 years old. I've been working comic book professional in my own name for 54 years, and my actual career stretches back to 1968 when I became an assistant to Gil Kane. Gil Kane is the single most important male mentor in my life, and I actually never really did any actual hands-on work for him because I really sucked. But I learned everything I needed to know about being a comic book artist from watching him for a year. I don't draw anything like Gil. I don't think anything like Gil. And I owe my career to 5 men, Gil the first. All of them share one important trait. None of them could write worth of shit. And I made a commitment to myself. Once I became a working professional in my early 20s, if you come by my table, you'll see a photograph of me at 25. Hillary Staten found it behind a drawer when Joe was clearing out a room. And it's me at 25. And I am utterly callow in every way, wearing a flannel shirt, as I did then, because that's what we did then. And I'm sort of mid-fuckable. You know, not quite really good, but almost. I look like the Jewish Robert Downey Jr. after Revenge. And I made a commitment to myself when I began to understand, even in the early 70s, that the writers were running the game, because they're smarter than most artists, that I had to become a writer as well. Because I came to understand that certainly in my generation, the credentials would be working in the comic book business as a writer were having failed as an artist. And it didn't seem to be a CV of any real value. So I taught myself to write. I'm a reasonably well-read guy within a narrow frame. The guy who represents me for good conventions has described me having a wide but shallow pool, and that's sort of me. Okay. I became a working professional in my own name at the age of 21, and I wasn't good enough for the work, but there was so much work that had to be done, pages had to be filled, so I got work despite the fact that I sucked a bag of dicks. I learned to be good over the next 10 years. I became good. When I became good, I realized that what I defined as good had nothing whatsoever to do with the definition of good as that applied by the mainstream comic book audience. The mainstream comic book audience responds to the form, to the content rather. I respond to the form as it applies to content. And that seems like a smarty pants thing to say, but the truth is, comics is a language unto itself, and the unfortunate fact is that the Comics Code drove away a critical audience in 1955. And once that critical audience was driven away, what was left behind was a bunch of retards who like superhero comic books and funny animal shit. And the actual critical thinkers ended up returning to comics 5 years later with the beginning of the Undergrounds. And someone said to me today that a younger artist than me, who described himself in this way, and was stunned to find that I had already described myself in precisely the same way over the past couple of years trying to turn this. I consider myself too weird for the mainstream, too mainstream for the weird. I like the look of mainstream comic books. I have an aversion to self-consciously strange stuff. I was not an X-Files fan, and I hated Twin Peaks because I regard it as like Ooga Booga for Nebraska. And you know, I'm a coastal person. You know, people still think I live in New York City, and I haven't lived in New York in 40 fucking years. I live in a small town in Southern California where no one has any idea what I do for a living. When they find out, they are completely mystified and nonplussed. They don't know what to make of this. They pay you for this shit? Really? That's followed by, what the fuck are you doing here? You know, those two things. So, are you drawing or writing? Looks just like me. And you're left-handed too, which I really respect. So am I.
I
So
get
am
to
I.
smudge all my pencils.
We'll die young. You know, right? So left-handers are to be murdered by the world. The world is a right-handed world. And left-handed people are a victim of the right-handedness of the universe.
Don't even give me a can opener.
No shit, right? Right? This one?
Yeah.
There you go. I know, I can dig it. Yeah, I mean, my handwriting looks like I just give up vowels at about the third word in, you know, so it's kind of sad. So that's my CV. That's who I am. To my shock and dismay, I have outlived, certainly on a professional, creative level, many of my colleagues and contemporaries. The only other guy who's doing work of any value of my generation that isn't an embarrassing, shaming sort of parody of itself is Walter Simonson. And you know, the rest of my colleagues are all basically, you know, resting on their laurels and doing bullshit. You know, I'm not that nice a person. Some of you who know me know that I'm a good person, but only situationally kind. I'm kind to children, and I'm kind to the infirm. I have no patience for drunks. And I got hard hit on by one of our drunken colleagues a couple of nights ago, and it's still like, get the fuck away from me. I've been sober for a long time, and my empathy and patience for drunks is limited as I get older and older. So, under normal circumstances, I would just keep talking, but there's enough of you. It's rare because I attract a very small crowd, and the crowd that I attract will frequently tell those who chose not to come that you missed a fucking great hour. So I'm going to basically open this. If any of you have any questions to get me started, I can go on, but I'd love to have some interplay with you guys. Someone have a question, please? You, stand up, please, so they can hear you as well.
Will there be another Fargo book?
Yes, yes. I've written the script a year ago, and by the way, if you've read the first one, and you liked it?
Yes.
Okay. Are you familiar with the original material?
No. When I heard the one that came out last year, I liked your work, so I bought it just off of that.
Okay. The books are very formulaic. The novels are very much the same. They have the same level of sexual content, say, as the James Bond novels. I cleaved very closely to the book that I adapted when I wrote and drew the book. When I wrote the second book, I was much looser with myself because I felt much more confident. I'm a much better writer than the guy who wrote those books. Take my word. And so I loosened up quite a bit. And the second script, I think, is vastly better than the first script. Butch Geis was supposed to draw it, but he, of course, is dead. The nerve. And it's been taken over by Brent Schoonover, who I don't know personally, but I've been in touch with him, and I've been feeding. I'm a research guy. I believe in reference. I don't trust my memory or any of my own judgments. So when I'm doing stuff, I don't make shit up. You know, so neckties got to be right. You know, hats might got to fit correctly. Most guys of the generation after mine don't know how to draw men wearing hats because their dads didn't. And so there will be a second one. When, I don't know. The script was written a year ago. I've been waiting for fucking pages.
Is this one going to be through Zoom? Probably
Probably not, because those guys are idiots. Well, that was unkind. They're not idiots. They're not idiots. They didn't seem to have a clue about modern publishing or printing. They seemed to. They were operating in an analog world, and we were put way into digital. We had my editor, and my production person, had published material for various engines for quite some time. These people were talking about register marks, right? What the fuck? what is this? You know, you're going to correct with a blue crayon? What did it mean? I was stunned. I mean, and the publisher of the book, who is a novice at this, was taking them seriously. We kept saying, no, Mike, they're just full of shit. They don't know what they're talking about. Also, they take too much money off the top. I did not make a dime off that project. I'm lucky enough, unlike a lot of my colleagues, I recognize that my career was short and transient and transitional. So I took care of myself financially. I worked in television for 15 years on television shows I never watched, so that I could put together a pension and a real estate portfolio. Because I recognized the fact. I didn't think I'd live past 50, but there was a potential I might make it to 60. Here I am at 75. And, you know, like Bill Burr has said, you know, we drop dead, but I haven't hit that point yet. So I could afford to do this. I haven't billed for a job, with very few exceptions, in several years. All the work I do for Image, I do for free. I take all back end money because I have a pension, and because I own my house outright, because I was careful with my investments. Because I don't have any faith in my own ability to invest money myself, because I'm a moron when it comes to numbers. I had 800 English boards of the SATs, perfect score. As you can tell, I'm pretty verbal. And a 400 math score, which means that I should be allowed near a cash register. I'm a numerical moron. My wife will yell out to me, how do I spell, but I will spell, and she will be unable to follow me because she's kind of like a little ADHD, whereas I can't. I have to do calculations with a pencil. It's like cave paintings, and you know, nothing. So that should answer you in a long way. Anyone else? Come on, let's go. John, what do you got?
Yeah, I'd love to hear, you recently on Facebook talked about working on a Zorro series.
Yes.
I'd love to hear about that.
Yes.
That's coming up soon, right?
Again, people are like, you must love, no, I don't, it's my job. You know, people assume that when I did The Shadow, I did a Shadow pulp fancier for years. That shit's unreadable. It really is. It's like, despite Harlan is dead now, so it's okay. No, it's not really good. It's twice a month. And Zorro was not something I had any particular love or affinity for. I loved the shows when I was a kid. I loved Alex's work on the comic book adaptations and that stuff. But you know, it's just it is just stuff. And I built for that. And I wrote a 10-page Zorro story for these same people a number of years back. And I have when I do a story about a familiar character, I try to find something that's unfamiliar about that character. Okay, when I did The Shadow, my function in The Shadow was to take a guy born in the late 19th century and put him into the mid-1980s, and all of the sexism, racism, homophobia, and this misogyny that existed in a man of that era coming into play for a hero in that era. That's pissed off Harlan Ellison so much, it was fabulous. I wish he'd kill him. At any rate, in terms of Zorro, the 10-page story that I wrote was about a touring company of Shakespearean actors, 3 players doing the plays, coming to Capistrano. And it turned out that the player king, was Sir Percy, the Scarlet Pimpernel, and who was there to murder Don Diego's dad, because he believed that Don Diego's dad had betrayed one of the Scarlet Pimpernel's clients and gotten her killed. And it turns out the truth is that it was Bernardo's first love, and that he in terms had been betrayed. But we have a nice fight sequence between Zorro and the Scarlet Pimpernel. You know, yeah. And I wrote this, and having no idea who was going to draw it, and I came up with a really smarty pants way of doing Bernardo and Diego communicating through hand signals. And I mean, very graphic. It was the sort of thing that you expect from me and a guy like Walter, and it was drawn by Eduardo Risa, who completely ignored me. And you can't say, hey, Eduardo, or as they say, Edu, but he didn't do that. I was disappointed, but the job is great. It was a revelatory experience because Eduardo's pencils are not anything you'd expect. If you're interested, you can text me and I'll send you the material.
I'd love to see it.
You can see the pencils, the inks, and the English language script. Okay.
Deal.
Let me know.
Yeah.
So when they approached me with this, they offered me a rate that was insulting beyond even I, and I don't insult easily. That's why I insult very easily. I don't offend at all. But I said no, I can do this for this, and they agreed. And they agreed. And then I said, I do not want to do Zorro against the usual villains in Old Capistrano and Monterey and the whole blah 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 blah. The Camino Real. What do you want to do? I said, well, I want to put Zorro into a world in which Mount Tambora has just erupted, causing the year of no summer, fucked up the weather patterns of the entire planet. I want to do a story about Bonapartists trying to reestablish the empire. and I want to do a duplicitous Irishman in playing the role of Aaron Burr in creating an empire in South America. And I said, I was hoping that would be the end of this. They were like, get the fuck out of here with you, boy. And they said, yeah, let's do it. So I did it. And it's, I again, researched on it. I learned, to my delight, that Napoleon Bonaparte, in his invasion of Moscow, of Russia, toyed seriously with the idea of airships, with lighter than aircraft, that unfortunately they couldn't figure a way to propel them. They were using rowers, like an ancient galleon, and I said, okay, let's see what I can do. So I steampunked it a bit. I did. And so we've got I'm telling you the story, so we've got steampunkery, we've got airships, we got Zorro and pirates and pirate kings and masked battalions of revolutionaries. It's nutty, it really is. And my notes, I got notes from my editor, both of which are very salient and very, very doable and very good. But I'm still on hold waiting for notes from the copyright holders. I'm in a stasis position with that and with the final lettering on the Tenement Museum piece. I did a thing for the New York Department of Education in New York City and the Tenement Museum in New York City. If any of you have been to New York, the Tenement Museum is downtown at 99-101 Orchard Street. And what it is a diorama of living in this tenement in the 1890s and also the 1930s. And I did a piece about the Jewish immigrant experience that was written by Paul Evans. And again, that research came in. My notes from these people were some of the most idiotic notes I've ever seen in my life. It was fantastic, just fantastic. The lesson we learned from working with talent for clients who are not, that have an art director or not comics related, is that these fucking people have no fucking idea what they're talking about. It's astonishing. I was insulted by the notes, but I was able to move through that because the money was that good. And I've been really good about it because I looked into the Italian department too. I pretend to be Italian. I'm good with that. I was hired on the job because, as Paul Evans said, no one's a bigger New York Jew than you. So I'm that guy. So yeah, the Zorro thing is going to be weird. I'm not sure it'll ever appear in the English language. I don't know. I don't know. And I wrote it very idiomatically English because fuck it, I don't care. And I love watching that shit get mistranslated. It's really. The Italian and Spanish translation of Century West really cracked me up. So, and I had someone come to me, the Italians who were doing the Italian language edition of Times Square, asking me for some clarification on some of the language in the first volume. And I said it's all either ghetto slang or jazz slang, and it's not nice. They thought that box meant Pandora's box, and I disabused them of this notion immediately. So, someone else, come on. Cowards, babies, children, let's go. New guy, you have nothing to ask me? Really? You having too good a time as it is? You're wearing a Tantan shirt, that's good. Tantan of Vietnam. Yes, stand up. Let them join you.
Sure.
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 Whoa.
So when you say that you were no good when you started and your work through the 70s, explain that a little bit. Expound on that. Kind of what you mean, and then what that transition was, I guess, into the 80s that was good.
Okay.
What was the difference?
Okay. That's a fair regret. I discovered comics at the age of 4, in the summer of 1955. I've told this story a number of times. It shows up in Hey Kids Comics. I was given a box of a refrigerator box filled with comics of all genres in the summer of 1955. Concurrently, coincidentally, the same summer that the Comics Road Authority was enacted. And I climbed into the box of comics, and I had one of those epiphanies, a genuine soul on the road to Damascus experience. It was a transformative moment. I realized that A, someone made these, and B, I would like to be one of those people who made these. Now, I had not really demonstrated any talent, but I had hunger and blind rage. And that pushed me along a while. I was also very lazy and unmotivated. And then I became a stoner, which of course exacerbated that dramatically. I went to work for Gil Kane when I was 18, because his assistant had died in the middle of the night of an undiagnosed heart ailment. A guy who had lived would have probably been a serious player on a par with, say, if not Wrightson, then somewhere between Wrightson and Rich Buckley. That level of talent. Buckley was the only guy of my generation who landed fully formed in order to do superhero comic books. Had Buckley been an honest man as opposed to a criminal, he probably would have had a much greater impact and footprint on the market. But was. He was a take an easy route kind of guy, not a good guy. And so I went to work for Gil. I defended my work, and he dismissed my defense as saying it's not mediocre, it's just utter shit. But he put me to work, and I'm convinced in retrospect that the reason he hired me, and I mean this with all my heart, is that I was Jewish, that he could talk shit about everybody who wasn't. And that was the experience of the year. He was dismissive, he was curious, and he was also guilty of everything he's ever been accused of. We talk about his thieving of artwork, stealing it, just everything. And self-justifying, a goneth of the first order. But I learned more watching him do it than I did from all the hands-on work he did for everyone else. It was Neil Adams who bullied Murray Boltinoff into giving me a job. And I had worked for Wallace Wood, ghosting, doing the Western strip, which I was clearly ill-equipped to do. And the thing you have to understand about Wallace Wood is that when you look at Woody's Cannon strip and the Sally Forth strip, those were penciled by a non-artist who would take a lettered, half tabloid sheet size and go through the SWI file on Woody's instructions and find other artists' work, photographs, anything, and trace them with a blue pencil onto this work. Just cold trace them. And Woody would then come in with his brush and make them Woody. That's how powerful and strong his work was. And Woody was also a major narcissist and completely gobsmacked by the fact that the Indian industry did not make an exception for him. Much like Jack Kirby. Kirby was a genius, but he misunderstood the fact that he was also a cog in a giant wheel. There's an exegesis to be written about Jack Kirby being taken advantage of by two taller, better-looking Jews. But working for Woody it indicated to me just how shitty I was. And I was basically, Neil bullied people into giving me work to decent. And I was saved by inkers, because the work was just terrible. I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't know how to make a page, I didn't know how to make a panel. I didn't have any idea what my job was supposed to be. Today, anecdotally, I met some guy who's in his early 40s who had a portfolio, and I'm always very, very hesitant when people show me a portfolio. This guy had it all. His samples were just for the wrong material, but he really understood the language. His pages were organized, they made sense, they were graphically sound. His drawing was a bit crude, but not terribly. And it was all there, and it was like, holy shit, mine was not. And I worked for Byron Price, and working for Byron Price is like you lost a bet, and you have to continue paying the debt you lost. But I learned a great deal, and then I had a big fight with Jim Shooter at Marvel on Good Friday, so there were no witnesses. So it was his version of the story that became canon. And I left comics for nearly 2 years. I became a magazine illustrator, a paperback guy, at a time when people were being very experimental with paperbacks. I worked for Gene Light, I worked for Jim Bain, and I did very graphic paperbacks. And concurrent with that, the market fell out of the bottom of the paperback business. And my rates went from $3,000 a cover to $1,000 a cover. And then all of a sudden, I got an offer from First Comics to do a book. And the work that I did throughout the 70s was rushed, hack work. And in terms of Star Wars, the Star Wars experience is one of shameful bitterness. I was hired because of the Cody Starbucks stuff. And I was given 400 stills and the McCurdy paintings. And the stills looked like an IKEA in space. And I had done 2.5 issues of the book. I should explain, in reference to what I was talking about being a writer, I was the one who broke down the screenplay of Star Wars into 6 issues of comics. Roy Thomas never saw anything what was going to be on those pages until he got the pencils from me. I sat in the theater in the capital of the state, I forget which one of those lost palaces in New York City. But I had 2.5 issues under my belt, and I'm watching this movie, and I realized, holy shit, this is going to be a big deal. And what I didn't realize at the time was that my book was going to be the Old Testament of what was going to become a secular religion. I earnestly believed there was going to be a secular religion in the 21st century, but I suspected it to revolve around Elvis Presley. The work I did was subpar. I'd like to think I would have done a better job. I had known it was going to be as big a deal as it turned out, but I'm not sure I had the skill set to do so. It didn't lend itself to comics as much as people thought it did, although other people have done better jobs in service to it. And it must be pointed out that Stan Lee strongly objected to doing this book. He did not want to be in bed with any licensors. He did not have been happy with the Robert E. Howard license arrangement. The company was in the process of going bankrupt. It was Roy Thomas who literally forced his hand and made it happen. So Stan objected strenuously to doing any partnership with 20th Century Fox and Star Wars. And of course now he presents it all the time. He's just presenting it from beyond the grave. I might add also that the book saved the company from bankruptcy. Those first 6 issues sold in the serious millions. And my compensation on top of my $45 a page pay rate was an additional total of $1,800. I was at a convention some years back and I was telling this story, and some Weisenheimer fan, Walter Simon's first law is that a comic book fan will always tell you the truth as long as it's unpleasant. And this guy said, compare me to Harrison Ford's complaints. And I said, yeah, but Harrison Ford developed Fuck You Money Millionaire. I'm an $1,800 rate. Fuck you. His feelings were hurt. So my 70s, my 20s and the 70s were not stellar, but I had a great time. I got married a lot. I used a lot of drugs. I drank a lot of alcohol, and I had a great deal of weird sex. And it wasn't until First made me this offer. To this day, I still don't know why First had any confidence in me to make me such an offer on American Flagg. And American Flagg was my opportunity to demonstrate that I had actual value. There's a theory in the philosophy that goes around comic books, which is most of us are egomaniacs, pieces of shit that the world revolves around. And there's an element of truth to that. But I did this book, and they gave me enormous free rein. I worked my ass off on this thing. I just delivered. I made a partnership with Ken Brusnet, which remains in operation today. And by the way, Ken is as big a pain in the ass as I am, but I've gotten away with more because I have a certain charm, and I smile with a knife. Ken has a blunt instrument. It's just, Ken, shut up. You don't want to burn more bridges. Cut that out. And the book taught me a valuable lesson, which was that I was much better than I thought I was. I was actually capable of genuine quality, and it didn't mean shit to a trade. At a first panel, when we were introducing the character, someone in the audience asked, what were his superpowers? And I said that he can remove his underwear without taking his pants off, and he can make ice cream. And this kid was not amused. Kid was, what are you? Not amused by my response, because I was not taking his experience seriously. And Flagg never sold anything like, it outsold everything that's being selling today, but by standards of those days. I sold one copy for each of every Batman book or Watchmen book that was out there, because it did not represent the kabuki-like tropes of mainstream comics. Okay. It was using comic books, the venue of mainstream comics, to tell a story that had nothing to do with a rich guy who had a bad day when he was 8, or a bunch of people so narcissistic they felt they could put on an outfit and fight crime. I don't go to a lot of superhero movies because I don't care about the franchise. I have a genuine aversion to Deus Ex Machina stories and God stories. But I'm not that guy. So I could not do a superhero book with conviction if I tried. So I'm not condemning the process. I'm saying specifically that I don't have the goods to do a superhero book with the kind of conviction that Frank Miller had on Dark Knight or Alan and Dave had on Watchmen. I couldn't do it because I find the concept so utterly ludicrous that I feel I would start. It's like Donald Westlake. created the Dortmunder novels, the hard rock, because he was writing a Parker novel that kept getting funnier. And he accidentally invents a genre of crime fiction. And I can't take the foolishness of superhero stories is so ingrained in my head that I can't imagine and I believe it's a failing. I mean, I believe